So the first part of today should be really easy here. We're going to talk about domain and range and relations, and then we're going to get into functions. So a relation is just when you have a set of inputs and outputs. They don't necessarily belong to anything else, but it's just going to be a list of numbers. When you do the domain is the set of all inputs, and the range is the set of all outputs. Do we remember what letter domain goes with? X. Domain is X, and range is Y. So the first example, we just want to list the domain and the range. When you list the domain and range, you're supposed to put them in numerical order with no repeats. So this one happens to already be in numerical order, but if they weren't in number order, you'd put them in number order. So the domain is all the x's, all the x values listed on. This is what some of you, I think, on your last test, when I asked for the x-intercept and the y-intercept, you were trying to give me domain and range. It wasn't just you, it was a couple people. So, but domain and range are all the inputs and all the output. All the x's is the domain, is the input, and the range is all the outputs, the y. So then the range is 12.8. 16.2, 18.9. Again, if these weren't in order, you'd have to put them in order. Good? Do you guys remember from last year what it means to be a function? For every one input, to be a function, for one input I only want one output. So there can't be two. So that means, for another way of saying this, for every x,
there's a y.
Every x goes to only one y. Every x goes to only one y. The focus is on the x. That's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on the x. For every x, does that x only go to one y value? Does that input, for every input, do we only have one output? That's what it means to be a function. A function is a good machine. If you put one thing in, you only want to get one answer out. If you put one thing in and you get two answers out, that's bad. That's not a function. That's not a good machine. So if you look at number 1, again, the focus is on the x's. If you kind of focus on the x's here, does every x value only go to one y value? No. So this is not a function. Because what broke it?
5.
The 5. 5 goes to two y values. Yeah, 5 goes to 6 and 8, so it can't go to two different answers. So it's not a function. What about when you look at number 2? When you look at, again, the focus is on the x's. When you look at the x's, those are all separate. Even though they both go to 5, 6 and 8 both go to 5, that's fine. They're going to their own value. They don't go to two different values, so this is a function. It's not the y's we're worried about. It's about the x's.
So basically, x just can't be the same number.
X can't be the same number. Because when if you have two of the same x's and they're going to two different numbers, that's where it breaks. So now we're trying to decide whether an equation is a function. So it says the directions are going to say determine whether each equation defines y as a function of x. So the first thing is that the focus here, it says defines y. That tells you in order to really decide this, you have to solve for y first. You have to decide if when we get y by itself, if that equation is a function. So that's what you want to do first here, is you want to solve for y. So number 1, what do I got to do first? How do I get y by itself? Subtract 2x, right? Subtract 2x, we get y is equal to negative 2x plus 6. And then here's what you need to think. You need to think, if I put one value in, do I get one value out? If I plug one value in.
So do you plug any number in?
You have to think more generally. So you just think generally. If you plug a number, you can think of an exact value, but you need to think it has to apply for all values. So if I plug one number in here, how many answers am I going to get out? If I plug in 5, how many answers do I get? 1. If I plug in -7, how many answers am I going to get? 1. So this is a function.
Guess number 2 is not a function, because it's squared, you get the plus and can we get that?
Slow down.
Right.
So number 2. The number 1 is a function because when I put any number in for x, I'm only going to get one answer out for y. Watch what happens in number 2. It's going to make more sense when we look at number 2. But your focus is if I plug a number in, how many numbers do I get out? To be a function, when I plug one in, I only want to get one out. So again, the first thing you're going to do in number 2 is what? Solve for y. So subtract the x squared first. Then take the square root. What happens when I take the square root in an equation?
Plus or minus.
You have to put that plus or minus sign in there because it's an even root. Anytime you put an even root in a problem, you need a plus or minus. So now, that's your answer. That's going to help you focus a little bit here. That's your function now. Looking at this function. When I put one number in, how many numbers do I get out?
2.
Because of the plus or minus sign, right? This is not a function. It's not a function because of the plus or minus sign.